Welcome to another episode of Your Power Weapon on Urban Smart Network, USN. We have today, handling some of the news of this week, we have with us Nina May from Virginia. She's a videographer, filmmaker. She's a wonderful lady, organizer, friend of mine I've known for many years, and she'll tell you more about who she is. And also you can go to MazdaBlackLives.com and you can see her whole resume. We also have Arthur Ward from Chicago. Arthur is one of the founders of the ADOS movement, American Descendants of Chattel Slaves. And Arthur now has a new group that they started called the Children of the Freedmen of Chicago. So we're going to jump right into it and deal with some of the topics of the week. The number one topic right now seems to be on everybody's mind, pro, con, all kinds of, is this critical race theory. And I underscore this is a theory, but it's really getting into all aspects of our country, even the military. And people are very upset. Families are frightened for their children because it's being taught in the schools. And in my opinion, there's some of it's very good, some of it's very bad. And we need to take a look at that. And I want to bring on first someone who's been in the know on these topics for years. She's prophetic, actually. She's seen a lot of this coming, and she's prepared a lot of information that was done years ago, decades, maybe a couple decades ago, but is more apropos and poignant for today, right now. And I want to welcome my very dear and good friend of many years, Nina May. Nina, welcome to Urban Smart Network's Your Power Weapon. I'm so honored to have you, ma'am. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Ted. It's great to be with you as always. It's wonderful.
Nina, tell me, what is, as you're getting critical race theory over there in Virginia in the schools and so forth, how are you dealing with that? What is your view of it? Because you're right on the cutting edge of all of this.
Yeah, we're ground zero. Loudoun County is right down the street from where we are.
Oh, Loudoun County.
Yeah, and that's where it's all happening. And everyone has just been so shocked by it. At first, we thought it was a joke. We said, of course, they're not teaching that in school. They're teaching racism. In fact, I call it critical racism theory. I mean, it's such an anathema to who we are as Americans and what we've been through and how we have tried to heal so many diverse groups together. And we've been working on it for almost 20 years now, when we put out ERR and we did reparations, who should pay, socialism is slavery, do these Black Lives Matter? And we've been doing a lot of things through the years, because every time something crazy like this happens, we just shake our head and go, we cannot be doing this to our children. It is absolute child abuse. But what it reminds me of kind of what the Democrats have done for years and years, decades and decades. They divided the nation on a war, the Civil War. They divided the nation over the issue of slavery to keep slaves on the plantation. And what are they doing now? They're trying to open that plantation up again and put everyone back in there. Nothing has changed with the Democratic Party. It's the same thing that they did 160 years ago. And I think that's why it sort of shocks people. They go, haven't we lived through the whole civil rights movement? Haven't we, seen the blood of the Northern soldiers that come down and literally give their lives to people they did not know to free them from slavery? I mean, haven't we seen this through the years? And suddenly it's almost as though none of that matters anymore. It's like, oh, well, yeah, nothing to see, follow the shiny object over here. And thinking, no, we're not going to sit down and let this happen, because we've seen it happen in the past. We've seen how bloody it can be. And I was raised in the South. I was raised in the Democrat South. You could not find a Republican in the South. In fact, if you were a Republican, you were called an in lover. So I thought, well, I must be a Republican then. And I switched parties. And that's really when I switched parties, when someone said that was, and the other thing they said was the difference between the two parties is that the Republicans are the party of the rich and the powerful. The Democrats are party of the poor and the downtrodden. And I said, well, what idiot would be a Democrat?
Right.
Wouldn't you want to automatically be the party of the rich and powerful, if that's what you're calling them? So I've seen a lot of this from, obviously white, I'm white, but from but from that racism perspective in the South. and the way they fought to keep the Jim Crow and the segregation and separate but equal and, on and on. And it was embarrassing as an American to see this happening to my fellow Americans. And if you said anything, same thing happened back then. It's happening now. You're silenced. You're derided. You're marginalized. You're called all kinds of names if you dare speak out against this. So it's almost as though my entire life has been spent fighting racism, and now to see the people that claim to be the biggest champions against racism doing exactly what they're claiming the other side is doing. They truly are the racists. And it's shocking to me what is happening. It's just shocking. And to see these brave teachers that they've never been involved politically before, standing and giving the most, parents, and giving the most eloquent speeches. And they're driven by the passion and the love for their children and the love of this country and the love of freedom. They're saying, no, we are not going on this plantation again. We burned that sucker down. We're not going back. So, we just need to be educated. We need to have the courage of our convictions to speak out against it, not be afraid of the names. I mean, how many times, for goodness sakes, can they call you a racist? In how many ways? So you can't let that upset you. You just got to keep moving forward. You got to keep pushing and fighting back against this evil. It truly is evil.
It is. As you pointed out in your work, all your works, particularly Emancipation, Revelation, Revolution.
Right.
You point out something that most people in this country, Democrat, Black, white, Republican, don't know is the actual roots to what we call today systemic racism. And the roots to, if there's going to be reparations, who is the culprit that should pay? When you have a crime scene, who was the driver, who was the shooter, everybody has a role, who had the role. And talk to us a little bit about your ERR, because that is really apropos for today. Well, how they can see it.
The reason I did it, produced this movie, was I was tired of being called a racist when I knew what the facts were, and I knew exactly what the history of the Democrat Party was and the Republican Party. A lot of people don't know that the Republican Party was founded as an abolitionist party.
Right.
6 of the 9 planks of their first platform, 6 of the 9 dealt with equal rights, civil rights, emancipation, everything. Like, basically, let's just get rid of this thing. It's been way too long, and we're going to do this. Well, within 11 years, they had their very first president, which was Lincoln,
right.
And they fought a war that the Democrats started to keep slavery alive. They fought the war. They said, no, you're not going to divide our nation over this horrific practice of keeping people enslaved. You're not going to do that. So I keep saying, if you're going to have reparations, we need to put that bill, tack it to the door of the DNC, the Democratic Party, because they were the ones that, again, divided the nation over slavery. And they're as a Virginian, it's kind of embarrassing, but the Confederacy, the head of the Confederacy was in my state of Virginia, down in Richmond.
That's right.
And, Jeff Davis, they're talking about now the American flag being a racist flag. And you think it's exactly what they did back then. They changed the Union flag and they put in their little rebel flag. So they're doing it again. Everything they did back then, they're doing exactly the same thing now. And sadly, they're getting away with it.
Why do you suppose, Nina, why do you suppose that, the history is clear. Why do you suppose they're getting away with this kind of behavior, these antics?
Well, I think that they have sufficiently and effectively co-opted every aspect of our society. They control the media, they control academia. I mean, we're seeing that when you got the teachers union basically saying, your kids belong to us. We're going to teach them what we want them to know. We're going to indoctrinate them. They're not your children anymore. And you're going, whoa, okay. How they belong, big media. My goodness gracious, big media. I thought the left hated big corporations.
I did too.
And suddenly they're like in bed with all these billionaires that are controlling everything, every aspect of our lives. It's a tyranny that we're living under right now. It really is. And I'm telling you, I talk to people, black, white, red, pink, whatever color, I could care less. Everyone is scared for this nation. Everyone is frightened that we might not be around much longer because they have so sufficiently embedded themselves in these very key elements of society that it's like a tick. I mean, we're on a farm. I know what it's like to have a tick embedded and to pull that sucker out. You know,
and when you pull it out, you better get the head.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's why I have this flag. This is not a protest. I love my country. I love this. This is mine. I have this flag upside down because we're in distress. The National Flag Code says that the flag should not be flown upside down except in cases of dire distress of life and property. And so that's why I'm doing it, because you're exactly right. I'm not sure if we're going to be here, as it were, tomorrow. You know, Malcolm X said something very interesting in 1963 when Martin Luther King and and John Lewis was working with the Democratic Party to organize the 1963 March on Washington, D.C. And he said something very interesting that caused everybody to be puzzled, because he was saying that he said when he saw them working with the Democrats and Lyndon and Kennedy, he said to them, black people, you've had the wool pulled over your eyes. You've been hoodwinked. You've been bamboozled. How can you organize a civil rights march or rally with the very people who are denying you? Bull Connor, George Wallace, all of those people were Democrats.
Robert Byrd. Called the conscience of the Senate. Joe Biden actually spoke at his funeral, gave a eulogy, and said what a wonderful leader he was. He was his guide. Hillary Clinton said he was her mentor. He is absolutely given a bye. And guess what? He was a Kliegel of the KKK. Forgot to mention the Democrats founded the KKK in 1866. There's like 16 volumes in the congressional records about the whole founding. It was the terrorist arm of their party, because what they wanted to try and do was get all the power back that they lost during the war. And I keep saying, unfortunately, that Lincoln was way too easy on them. He should have had a lot more, conciliations and everything before they were allowed back into the Union. But it was sort of like, okay, well, we fought the war. We want to, don't want to have any more bloodshed. Kumbaya, let's all make nice together. If he'd been a little bit tougher, I do not think we would have the segregation and the racism that continued after the war. And it went underground. It went underground exactly like we saw the Democrats do with its critical race theory. No one knew it was coming, and suddenly, poof, it's right there in front of us. You're thinking, how do you kill this weed now? Yeah. I mean, it's kudzu, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Only on UrbanSmartNetwork.com.